Enemy! I've hit him! Enemy killed! Gone! Enemy killed!
Hidden and Dangerous 2 is a 2003 game by Czech developers Illusion Softworks, who also worked on the Mafia series and the Viet Cong games. This game is what we call a gem in the rough, extremely ambitious for its time but also very successful in most aspects, however it is held back a bit because of a couple of frankly dated elements and some dickish level design. Nonetheless, packed with content, cheap, extremely entertaining and a rather unique experience, a masterpiece of its genre that succeeds on so many levels where others have failed miserably. Let's begin. Unlike the first game, which was a Silent Hill spin-off, Hidden and Dangerous 2 is set in the Second World War. You choose a 4-man squad of SAS commandos, each with different stats, equip them to suit their skill and the objectives, and finally guide them through series of missions, or campaigns as the game calls them. From Norway to Africa, from the Alps to Burma, you'll be fighting in vastly different environments and with different goals in mind. You may be raiding a base, capturing officers, blowing up bridges, setting up ambushes, collecting intel or raiding ISIS. The variety is great and the game is fresh throughout, although some of the last missions can feel a bit less polished. Now, before we get into the meaty parts, let me just say that if you decide to buy this game, you might want a widescreen patch. This will fix the resolution, but still the menus look ugly, the inventory doesn't work properly, the HUD is centered and the first person overlays are broken. To fix most of these problems, go inside the script folders, open this ini file and set fix HUD to 0. The vehicles overlays won't be totally fixed, but now everything else is proper or at least decent. Also remember to change your keybinds because the default ones are seriously dated. Anyway, Hidden and Dangerous 2 is a squad-based stealth-focused FPS. While your silenced weapons are few and inaccurate, you're supposed to stay as unnoticed as possible, aided by a third-person view and a visibility range indicator. Staying in the shadows, making little noise and moving slowly will ensure you stay under the radar until it's time to strike.
Fire at will! Roger!
You can switch to your other squad mates at any time and thankfully they can follow orders decently and hold their own in combat. The game also has a somewhat janky tactical map that allows you to pause and give more detailed instructions to your team. In theory, you could also coordinate stealthy takedowns with this, but it doesn't always work as well as you'd hope.
Signal number 1. Enemy spotted. He's dead. I see them.
But while with this it's technically possible to delegate everything to the AI, you're mostly gonna use it to have your team move around while you do something else. The tactical map is also completely optional, the voice commands are good enough. Furthermore, you could just play a lone wolf campaign to entirely negate having to control people, with the added bonus of seeing your guy rumble to himself in cutscenes. Also, the gunplay in particular is good, and most levels don't force you to be stealthy, so the guns blazing approach is actually viable. One of the reasons you might want to stay out of sight is disguises. Some levels have you start with an enemy uniform, but in most others you can get a guy to surrender and steal theirs. Now, in case you're wondering, this is something the SAS didn't do, as it is against the Geneva Convention. Nevertheless, in-game it's executed weirdly. First of all, you need to carry only Axis equipment, then a bar fills up. This bar is your disguise meter, and it will deplete when enemies look at you. It isn't the running, the crouching or even the standing next to corpses that gives you away, but your traditional British smile. It's also hilarious that your disguise is never compromised. Shoot a man in the foot, hide behind a corner for a few seconds and he'll have forgotten about you. Aggroed enemies in general act hilariously. Rather than sounding the alarm or warning people, they just push your last known position and see what's up. Also retarded is when they leave a foxhole in order to find the sniper that's shooting at them. But most retarded of all is the notion that one of these Norths can pass for a Japanese soldier.
Even those Japanese look mighty white to me.
Still, despite the bareboness of it, it's a fun gameplay mechanic. Verboten. Who's gonna stop me, huh?
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Although it's natural to be reminded of games with better disguise systems. Now the game does have its bad sides for sure. First of all, saves are tied to the difficulty. On hard you can only save 3 times per mission and very hard doesn't allow you to save at all. In a normal shooter this would already be annoying, but in a game with a big emphasis on stealth it sucks ass. You're frequently giving your men detailed instructions and sneaking around a lot, neither of which are fun to do over if you die. Thankfully the game is really enjoyable on normal and the higher difficulties do provide a decent challenge for later runs. During most campaigns the game allows you to receive reinforcements at points, so you can live with your mistakes. I wish however that your soldiers could suffer particular debilitating injuries instead of just having their HP go down. It would make less of a difference on higher difficulties because the enemies get substantially more lethal, but it still would have been cool. Possibly the most annoying problem is that you only have one save slot, which can lead to situations like this one. Okay, this is a bit extreme, but it's not uncommon to save after completing an objective, only to find out that several of your guys are in peril at once. This happens a lot because the game is really fond of spawning enemies in already cleared areas. For instance, look at this.
He's gone.
Not only a German spawned directly in front of one of my soldiers, but for whatever reason the door my guy used to get upstairs is now locked. Of course, each level is different, some even kill your guys for no reason if they're in the wrong spot. Having the difficulty tied to your profile is also bad. Now, that was a lot of negativity, so I want to show you just one campaign to prove that this game is heaps of fun. Before that, the tutorial, set in the SAS training camp. You start with a trial of your physical prowess.
You need to get through the snake track. And remember, I'll be watching you, so there better be no dawdling.
Then an IQ test.
Can't you read English? The sign says exit. Now move. Do you have a problem with English? I told you the entrance is on the other side of the building. This is the exit. This one was pretty good, Craig. Him? I hope he can shoot better than he can read.
Also to notice that you'll be mostly firing American weapons for whatever reason. What's wrong with my ass? Next up is the explosive range. Grenades in this game are so good. Once you get used to throwing them, landing one is just...
I'd like to build the world a home and furnish it with a lawn. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company.
Just mwah! So let me show you how it's done here at the range. Okay, I see how it is. See? Easy as pie. Best game ever.
Advance over there.
Anyway, the Africa campaign. First thing first is choosing people with the right stats. They're all important, from having guys who can shoot straight to heal decently, and you should pick the right soldier for the right role. Also the stats can increase when doing certain things in missions. High shooting is good for the squad sniper, high strength is good for the heavy weapons guy, first aid for the medic and stealth for the man who's moving around the most. When choosing equipment, you should keep in mind that you won't be able to resupply, although when replacing casualties the reinforcements bring their own stuff. One thing they did well is the balance. Don't get me wrong, some guns are better than others, like the Enfield is way better than the Springfield, and for whatever reason you can only fire the Bren gun when prone?
Okay, entry frag.
What?
Look at this guy. Look at him.
But in general, each one has a role. There's plenty of situations in which you'd rather have a bolt action than a garand or a bar instead of an SMG. Okay, Spaghetti Airport is the first mission. The briefing tells you it's gonna be a one and done deal, but the Luftwaffe officer you sent to capture leaves before you arrive. So you clean up the airfield and, if you're smart, secure as many uniforms as possible. You can leave the level with a flak truck or with a jeep, which will actually dramatically change the next one. In mission 2, as we're tracking the German officer, you're to cross a desert full of resting Germans. You're gonna encounter a lot of resistance, but if you're disguised... well, let's see what's on the Italian radio first. Did you guys know Eurobeat is Italian music? In Mission 3 you come to an oasis and clear it of Germans, also meeting the first mechanic in the game that's not out for blood. Next up you have to defend the oasis during a night attack by German infantry, half trucks and tanks. But once the assault is repelled, you leave to infiltrate an enemy airfield, exploiting the disguise the best you can. Excuse me, greatest ally coming through. You heard that? We better check it out, whoever shot might be hidden. And dangerous too. Oof, lots of dead people out there, you guys better take a look. Anyway, after you're done with war crimes in the hangar, you clean up the runway, finally capture Schumann and make him fly a plane out of there. Last level, each one of your squad mates is manning a gun in the plane, shooting down German fighters until it's safe. And with that, the campaign is over. You see, the bare bones but functional disguise mechanics meant that I could play the levels this way. Without it, I might have been better off using the flak truck on the second mission, maybe silenced weapons on the oasis to try and clear out key targets before I was spotted. Mars or Brengans would have also made the defense more easy, but you can't have allied equipment on you if you want to stay disguised. Now, not all campaigns leave you this much freedom. Some are pretty linear and with little tactics to employ, others are a bit too strict, but in general they're all pretty good, with optional objectives, choices and allies to team kill with no repercussions.
Should I go with you? I may be able to help.
Unfortunately, the cooperative mode that was added with the expansion is of lesser quality. They're just objective maps with bots, gone is the continuity between levels and the choices. Some even force you to forgo stealth. Instead you get the multiplayer version of weapons, a gigantic list of objectives to complete and some frustrating scenarios probably made with infinite response in mind. Worst of all is that you can't just have your guy in his underwear.
I want you dressed at all times, or it's my butt up your arse.
It's not worthless, but the enjoyability changes drastically between maps. Oh no. Oh no! Fortunately, there's community maps, which, while ranging from good to absolute memes, are really fun. I'm guessing the modding tools weren't that extensive, because for some stuff they had to get creative. Dios mío. El tanco. If you want to play multiplayer, you're gonna need some fixes and a virtual LAN network. Going back to the single player, I just wanted to note that this game has some of the weirdest Easter eggs.
Water. Piss. Fire! 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 And Devil Man! Hey! Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, can stop me!
Okay. Last thing to talk about is the presentation. The graphics are good for the time, although they are dated for sure. The music is great, no complaints there. The other sounds are just fine. The weapons are a bit weak maybe, but they're ingrained in my brain. So, this game is a classic. It would have greatly benefited from a normal save system, and some of the level design is downright mean, but overall it's really fun. The mission variety keeps things fresh, squad management is engaging, and the gunplay is good. It's definitely the most fun title these guys worked on, and I would have loved to see a sequel. There's just a lot of room for improvement that could send this game from solid but janky and flawed to one of the best games out there. Still, I can't recommend it enough. It occupies a quite unique spot between realism and arcadiness, it's packed with content, and it even has some replayability. It's also tons of fun in multiplayer depending on the map. Okay, that was Hidden and Dangerous 2. Thanks for watching. See ya! Mwah.